Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Roundup podcast. I am your usual host, David Fox. With me, as always, is the wonderful and amazing and entertaining UberHansen. Folks, we are here to discuss the Buffalo Bills, and actually, our very first comment, the only comment right now, from Autumn, it kind of wraps up pretty perfectly, I think, what we're feeling, which is go Bills, but also sad face. If that doesn't express the sentiment of what we're all feeling, I'm not entirely certain what does. So that's a good way to start things out, I guess, if you want to call it good. We are very happy to have everyone here tonight. Hopefully we can have a semi-reasonable discussion about what happened last night, where the Bills are going to be going moving forward. I know that's not going to happen. I'm just trying to put it out in the universe before we get too far deep into this. And before we get too far deep into this, because I have completely dropped off the way that I should, we are going to do the important thing first. And we are going to do a quick ad read. And I'm not even going to do it. We're going to have our wonderful friends, Greg and Aaron, do it from the Cover One flagship show.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Thank you, Greg and Aaron, for reading that with the exact same tenor and aplomb that they always do, and the exact same clothes. It's very impressive that they're able to do that every single week. Equally as impressive is our wonderful folks over at Underdog Fantasy, whose overlay I will bring up on the screen right now. There it is. If you go to Underdog Fantasy, it's probably because you didn't get to draft Josh Allen in your home league, but that's okay, because if you use Underdog Fantasy's pick'em contest, you can win by predicting if Josh Allen will go over his yard totals, his touchdowns, his completions, and more. If you think Allen to Diggs will blow up this week, if you think Allen to Kincaid will blow up again this week, we're going to talk about that. You can put them both or all three in your pick'em, predict up to 5 turnover unders correctly, and win 20 times your original money. That is fantastic odds for you, quite frankly. And if you use the promo code COVER1, that's the number one, when making your first deposit, Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That is a free $100 in free play if you use promo code COVER1. Sign up today and start winning today. Thank you to Underdog Fantasy for always being a wonderful sponsor of the show and of Cover One as a whole. All right. Before we get any further into this, now that everything has been taken care of, we can finally get to the important thing, and that is Uber. How are you today?
Yeah, I mean, go Bills, frowny face is about right where my personality is right now. So yeah, I think that was perfect by Autumn to start the show, and I think that'll be probably the way that we discuss the Bills the rest of the show.
Yeah, as RJ says, well, everything is terrible. I wouldn't say everything. I would say most things are terrible right now. There are some actual good things to talk about from that game. Tim A says the quote, "in the hunt, Buffalo Bills." It's weird to be back in that territory again, isn't it? Which is funny because they were kind of that in the hunt team back in 2021, right? When they were 7-6 going into December. And they just sort of went on a run near the end of the year against some pretty bad teams and, ultimately pulled it out and got the division title again. But it's going to be tough. It's tough. It's not fun. It's not fun to be behind the 8 ball at this point in the season. Tim A says the Bills got to start playing a lot better in these late games. It's rough going to bed mad and having to wake up early for work. Tell me about it. As someone who yesterday my day started at 5:30 and it ended at 12:30 a.m. It's not fun being awake for how many hours is that? Like 19, 18?
Yeah.
19 straight hours. I had a very, very brief nap at work in between services. And that was it. I don't even know how long that was. It was that's what I did yesterday. It was great. And then I had to work today, which was great. But yeah, having to deal with these primetime games, and then it's too much. It's too much for me. I can't do this. And they do it again next week on Monday Night Football, which is even better. It's great. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
This is why 1 p.m. games are way better than any other games, because you can wallow in your own misery before you go to bed, and you wake up maybe a little bit less pissed off than you do when you go to bed directly after the Bills lose a primetime game. It sucks.
I've never, ever fully appreciated the wonderfulness that is a 1 p.m. game until they started playing like 4 or 5 primetime games in a season. I'm just like, I can't deal with this. This is too much for me. I don't want to have to deal with all this garbage. It's so bad. I hate it. I really do.
And it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better. Like, what do we got? We got 8:15, 4:25, 4:25, 4:25, 4:25, 8 o'clock, 1 p.m. to be decided. So, I mean, 4:25 better than 8 o'clock, but at the same time,
4:25 I can deal with. 4:25 is fine, but like, oh my gosh, this is brutal. Anyway, that's enough talking about like time slots and how it irritates me specifically. We're just gonna jump right into it. Let's start with. Do you want to start offense or do you want to start defense? Where do you want to start?
I mean, I would say let's start with the bad, but it's both bad. So
there's bad and good on both sides.
Let's start with the offense. Just get the whole thing, because I know that's what we have to talk about.
That is something we are going to talk about. So here's the funny thing about last night, right? Bengals go right down and score. Okay, the Bills have never been great in the last couple of years on those scripted drives on defense, even when they were healthy, right? Like, that wasn't unexpected to my mind. So it was like, okay, 7-0, so be it. All right, get the ball. Go right down the field, touchdown. I was like, all right. So those first 2 drives promised a type of game that did not happen. Those first 2 drives just made me feel like, oh man, it's gonna be a like shootout classic. Like, we just saw Baker Mayfield and CJ Stroud go at it. It's you know. Okay. So we're gonna stop for a second. Thank you to this person, whoever this is. His name is Jeffrey Fox. Who's to say who that is? For the $1.90 for the $9.99 super chat. Happy birthday! It is my birthday. Which makes last night's loss even that much better. Because the Bills always manage to find a way to just lose a game around my birthday. So that's great.
Happy birthday! I had no idea it was your birthday either. So
few people do. After we're gonna go on a very mini rant. I will try to keep this as short as possible. But once I discovered how to disable the notification on Facebook that lets people know it's your birthday, I did it immediately because I got so tired of people feeling obligated to wish me a happy birthday when they didn't know it was my birthday until Facebook told them, and then me feeling obligated to thank them for them being up. I cut it off. I'm done. Thank you all for the happy birthday wishes. Thank you all. It's very, very appreciated. Yes. So thank you all. And thank you to that's my dad, in case anybody didn't know. That's my dad. So going back to this. So, we saw a couple of great games earlier. I've like Texans Bucks was a great game, great shootout. CJ Stroud delivered in the last second. And after 7-7, it was like, okay, it's going to be that type of game. It's going to be 2 great quarterbacks going back and forth. And then it just turned into, oh, well, maybe the Bengals are just going to run away with this and the Bills are just going to be embarrassed in primetime. And then the Bengals never did. They just sort of like slept walk for most of that game after they scored 3 touchdowns. They just like went into full sleep mode and didn't really do anything, especially in the second half. They scored 3 points in the second half. And I still am not 100% sure how they managed to only score 3 points in the second half, especially because that was after Terrell Bernard went out of the game. I kind of said this after the game where, if you're a Bengals fan, I don't know how good you feel about that game. Like, obviously you want it. That's the important part. You feel good. An ugly win is better than an ugly loss. And I wouldn't even necessarily call this an ugly win, but it's something that's just sort of like, I don't know how good I feel about that. And it's a shame because it really should have been a really great game and it just never quite got there. It really, we should have known what kind of night it was going to be after Allen got flagged for doing the Mickey Mouse pointing finger at the Bengals. It's just like, come on, what are we doing here?
It's funny you bring up like the Bengals just didn't put the game away. They had countless opportunities to literally put the game away and didn't. I saw who we had on last week, Max Toscano, literally going back at some people after the game like that want Zach Taylor fired. Today, Bengals fans want Zach Taylor. Fire him today. He didn't do well enough. And it makes all of this easier for me with Bills fans when every reaction is fire somebody. It's every fan base does it. I think there are certain people that maybe I'm becoming more amicable with the concept of firing. I'm not fully there yet. And there's other ones that I'm not even close to. But interesting nonetheless that Bengals fans kind of left that game not particularly happy.
Yeah. There's reason for that, right? Like Zach Taylor being very conservative through a lot of that game, especially on fourth down, just like it was very, very odd, some of the decisions that he made. And then they like went for it on 4th and 5 once and they like threw short of the sticks to a tight end. It was just very, very weird. So I understand like frustrations, obviously, with the from Bengals fans and with Zach Taylor, but also if they got rid of Zach Taylor, they'd just kind of be screwed because there are issues with Zach Taylor. There's issues with every coach that's ever coached in a game. But what he brings to that team and what he's done for them, they'd be pretty lost without him. It's a similar thing with like Mike Tomlin, right? Where it's like, there are things that Mike Tomlin does that just drives me up the wall, and I'm not even a Steelers fan, and not the least of which is keeping Matt Canada for a third straight season. But like what Mike Tomlin does for that team, where they shouldn't be winning any games and they're currently 5-3, it's just like how can you possibly fire this dude? Because pretty much no other coach is going to be getting you into a position like that with the roster the way that it is right now. Especially on offense, it just doesn't make any sense for them to be winning games, and they still manage to do it. People sort of go through these cycles with their coach, especially coaches that have been there for a long time, right? And that they haven't done, because the NFL, like any other sport, is a what have you done for me lately kind of league, right? And if you haven't found success in the playoffs, if you've found a lot of failure in the playoffs, if you're not meeting expectations, it's there's a reason for people to get antsy, right? I think that's where a lot of Bills fans are right now. It's just like, there's just frustration because we all know how good this team is, and we saw it, right? Like the peak of this season so far, and maybe it stays that way, is that Miami game where we saw exactly how dominant this team can be, and where in every phase of the game, they just obliterated Miami, right? Like defensively, nobody has played that way against Miami until, well, I guess the Eagles kind of did, the Chiefs kind of did, but they didn't force the same levels of turnovers. They didn't like really figure out the best. And the Bills were also the first team to do it. And that's not to say that they like provided a blueprint to stop the Dolphins, because it's really just like forcing Tua to like go further into his progression after his first read, which I think everyone just knows. It was just a matter of like, can you get guys in position to do that, right? And some teams are able to do it, some teams are not. Some teams have talent to do it, and some teams don't. At that point, the Bills obviously did. And then directly after that, and during that game, it's like, oh, you lose Trey White, you lose Jaquan Jones, you lose Matt Milano. It's like, it's tough to deal. I mean, there's no way, and this was we're talking about defense. We need to talk about offense. That's what we're here to talk about.
Okay.
We'll get to the defense. We're going to talk about the offense. So starts off easy with that big touchdown drive. Next 4 drives, punt, interception, punt, end of half. And the grounding penalty, which is just about one of the most ridiculous calls I saw yesterday. And that included a pass interference called on Stephon Gilmore in the Cowboys-Eagles games, in which he barely touched a receiver. Like, it wasn't even like, oh, that's a little ticky-tacky. It's like, what did you see that you called pass interference on a ball that landed 5 yards out of bounds? Like, that was bizarre. And then somehow this topped that. It's actually pretty impressive, and they took their time to make that call too. Like they had already brought the punt team out or the kicking team out, and then a flag gets thrown at some point, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, it's grounding." By the way, and it's just like, what did you see and discuss that then made you feel like so confident that you needed to throw intentional grounding there on a play that every NFL team experiences at some point in the season, with a receiver and a quarterback not being on the same page? The receiver comes up short when the quarterback throws deep. How in God's green earth are you going to call that intentional grounding when every single team has that happen and nobody else gets called for that? How are you going to say with confidence, with your whole chest, that that's intentional grounding?
Yeah, and it's literally like the term is intentional grounding. You have to do it intentionally for it to be intentional grounding. That clearly wasn't intentional. It made no sense as a call. And granted, I think it was a 6-yard field, like 56-yard field goal. It would have been so not a gimme, but at least a shot at 3 points for the Bills and kind of get to 10, get within 11, get within, a 2-point conversion and a field goal. And then for the refs just to be like, nah. Like he intentionally grounded that by throwing it 70 yards downfield over Gabe Davis's head. Like he was trying to hit Gabe Davis on a go route. Gabe just didn't run the go. So it's just one of those things this game. It's one penalty, and there was multiple penalties this game both ways. That was just like, what the hell is happening right now? What? Yeah. And this is a thing that's to drive me nuts. Like these refs need to shut the hell up. Like this is getting ridiculous. They literally want to be the stars of the game. And I forgot the ref's name last night, but he's the one that had the funny video, right? That's like, excuse me, I'm talking to America. We all had a good laugh about that at that time. No, this guy's a freaking loser. Like the fact that he's like, I'm talking to America. Like he wants to be the star. And last night he made a point to be the star. It drives me nuts.
Alex Kemp is his name.
Oh, well, screw him.
I mean, it's just, he clearly wants everyone to know what his name is, and we're going to throw it out there. It's Alex Kemp, and he's bad, and he wants all the attention in the world, obviously. Just crazy. Just ridiculous. So that's how the first half ends. Then you get into the second half. They're driving, they get a touchdown, they kind of lull back and forth, and then they start driving again. Dalton Kincaid gets another first down. He was phenomenal in this game, by the way. Unfortunately, he just fumbled at the worst possible time in just the weirdest possible way, too. And it's always Jermaine Pratt, right? Like Jermaine Pratt has a way of just like willing a turnover to happen, it seems. Like last year against the Chiefs, I don't know if anybody remembers when on a critical third down, Mahomes hits Kelsey because of course, and Kelsey is like dragging Pratt and like another Bengals defender, and Pratt is just like trying to rip out the football from Kelsey like any other player does. It's very typical. It never works because at that point the ball is secured, right? Like it's in there. There's no way he's letting go. And then somehow on like the 5th time trying to rip it out, he rips it out and they get a turnover. I mean, it's just, I remember seeing that. I'm like, that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen in NFL games where somebody like actually keeps raking at the ball and it actually comes out, especially at a player like Kelsey, right? Like that just doesn't happen. And the same thing in this game where it's like Dalton Kincaid flips over, and the way in which he flipped over and the way Pratt hits the ball causes that fumble. And it's just like, it just doesn't happen. It's just a weird thing. It's like, and I'm kind of glad that that people seem to be on the same side. Yeah, like thank you. This chat is actually being is on the same page with me, which means I'm right. So thank you. You're all right as well. I don't blame Spin. This is Spin 0481. I don't blame Kincaid on that fumble. He was literally upside down. The defensive player hit the ball perfectly. RJ says basically, I can't blame Kincaid for that. Fumble shouldn't go against the stat line if you're upside down when you lose the football. Action Jackson 222. I don't blame Kincaid at all either. If that ball isn't fumbled, though, we probably, maybe, possibly win that game if things play out similarly after as they did. All true, right? Like it's a weird fumble that shouldn't take away how well Kincaid played in this game. Because he played so well in this game. He was so good. It was like, oh, this is exactly why they drafted him, to be able to do this, to be so smooth and fluid as a route runner, to be so smart and figuring out how to uncover from these guys underneath, providing that outlet, making plays after the catch. This is exactly why they why they drafted him with their 1st round pick. And to just have that happen was so frustrating and so defeating. It was just so bad. But it really was a great game from Kincaid overall.
Yeah, I mean, as far as fumble goes, like I'm not going to get too hard on like with him on this whole issue. Like it's. I do think as his career progresses, he'll learn to not get in situations where he's upside down. Now that's easier said than done. There's certain plays where that just happens to you, but like, you know, it does suck. He fumbled the ball. Like he still did fumble it, but at the same time, the slow-mo, the replay, like he's upside down and Jermaine Pratt basically just flicks his hand out. Like it didn't even look like Pratt was trying to punch the ball out. He just kind of like poked it with a finger and boom.
He saw Kincaid flash and was like, that's my job. Yeah. Grab something.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so.
And then I had tweeted this out today too. It just was another example of the bad luck the Bills are going through. And I don't blame luck for the reason Bills aren't winning football games. Bills aren't winning football games because they're not playing well enough to win said games. But at the same time, when you're a team that fumbled only 7 times this season and you've lost 5 of them, like those numbers don't make sense. I also tweeted out the Dolphins have fumbled 16 times. They've lost 5 of them. Like the Bills are just, the ball is made to bounce wacky and it's just never bouncing to the Bills essentially. And this is one of those ones where like, it could have hit the ground and like Kincaid could have turned around. It could have been right there and he could have grabbed it. That's
or someone else could have grabbed it.
And it bounces away. A Bengals player jumps on it and it pops out, shoots out, and Josh Allen grabs it and runs, hurdles the guy, scores a touchdown. Like we need a little bit of luck at some points. But at the same time, you know, that fumble, it doesn't take away from the game Kincaid has and the way that he's been kind of progressing as the season's progressed. Like he's the Bills wide receiver 2 right now. And he's turning into what by the end of the season, we might be like, he's a top 10 tight end, if not pushing higher than that, because there's not really a lot of great tight ends in the NFL right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's just, when they drafted Kincaid, this is exactly why he got drafted. This is why they wanted to bring him in. I mean, he's currently right now 40 catches on the season. He had 10 last night, which is crazy. 10 catches for a rookie tight end. It's nuts. For 81 yards. He has 339 on the season. Only has 1 touchdown, which is unfortunate, but that's probably more indicative of the Bills' struggles to score in general rather than just on Kincaid as a whole.
I got a stat for you too.
Go ahead.
Just remember this because you brought up rookie tight end with 10 receptions. That's the 3rd most in NFL history by a rookie tight end. By the way, it's behind just Mark Bavaro of the '85 Giants, who had 12. And then Jeremy Shockey of the 0-2 Giants, who had 11. Kincaid's number 3 all time.
What's with the Giants and their tight ends? They just have to. Do they just have this like rich history of tight ends?
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess. And then they drafted Evan Ingram, and nothing really came of that, did it? Yeah, it's a very, very impressive start from Kincaid. It's really good. I'm glad to have seen him starting to catch on now. I'm gonna just push back on this comment from Spin. Kincaid could have done this since week 1. But he's a rookie, and our coaching staff is so slow at using rookies' talent. So, first of all, no. I mean, like, he was out there as a major part of this offense since week 1, and he wasn't brought along slowly. He just got integrated into the offense slowly because Allen wasn't looking for him initially, right? Like this sort of goes back, and I might use this to sort of dovetail into part of this, but about Josh Allen. But yeah, Josh Allen was somebody who wanted to throw to Diggs and Davis and maybe a little bit of Knox early on in those first couple of weeks, and Kincaid still managed to get a couple of targets, right? Like it wasn't like he was completely disappeared from this offense. It was just that there were other focuses on the offense for Josh Allen. Now they're at a point where it's like, yeah, Kincaid is kind of really important right now. So he's going to get a lot of targets and a lot of chances, and he did, and he's making a great opportunity of it. Yeah, it's really great to see Kincaid come on. Let's talk about Josh Allen, because this was a really frustrating game to watch Josh Allen play, because there were some really solid plays that he made, and that was kind of it. That he was just kind of solid, and you needed to be far more than just kind of solid to beat this Bengals team, and they still almost managed to do it. But just besides that, right? Like they needed Josh Allen to do something really great in order to beat the Bengals. At least that's what I thought going into this game, because I didn't think that the Bills defense was going to keep up with the Bengals. And especially after that first quarter, it really didn't look like they were going to keep up with the Bengals. And then they just scored 3 points. They scored 3 points in the second half. I'm still not over that. Like, there's no reason that Bengals offense should have scored 3 points and only 3 points in the second half. It's insane. That's ridiculous. Against this Bills defense, that should not have happened. Yeah. But that's it. That is what happened. And the defense gave the Bills offense so many opportunities to take advantage of, and they flat out didn't. They just didn't. Whether it was an unfortunate fumble by Kincaid or just absolute, like, there just at no point did it feel like there was a sense of urgency from the Bills offense. And I don't even mean that from like a strategic standpoint of like, oh, they didn't use enough no huddle. They went no huddle. I believe Adam tweeted this out. If you don't follow Adam at Sharp and Pencil on Twitter, that they used no huddle on like 25 of their total plays on offense, which for an away game is pretty high. It's just like, what exactly are you expecting to, like, there's got to be something else here. And somebody, I think I was in a conversation with Aaron Quinn. If I figure out exactly what it is, I'll try and find it. But basically what has been a big disconnect, at least for us here at Cover One, has been we like to use statistical analysis as part of what the product that we put out here, right? Because we believe in what that analysis tends to bring, right? Like we feel like that brings a better sense of objectivity to watching this team. And it's been really frustrating because a lot of the statistics like EPA are still very much in favor of the Bills and their offense. They say like, hey, this is still a good offense. They still do a really good job. And clearly they're not, right? Like you watch this game, like, I'm sorry, like 18 points in an NFL game is more than likely not enough to win an NFL game. That's just not how today's NFL works. And somebody basically brought up the point that like they do really good jobs of getting the ball to a certain point, like that high red zone area, and then just finding a way to give the ball away, or finding a way to just not connect and score a touchdown. And that's probably right. Like they just sort of find a way where, so EPA will track, like, for those that are not like totally aware of what EPA is, the very basic structure of it is like it's a equation of some sort that will basically calculate what every play is expected to give you in terms of points added. That's EPA, expected points added, and that's on a per play basis for your team. SIS has a has their own metric based off of that, which is total points, which they use for per play per player, which is interesting, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. But for EPA, the way that the Bills are playing offense right now per EPA should be producing more points than they're actually scoring, right? And that's not what's happening. And I think that's where the disconnect is really happening, where it's like EPA, in basically every other circumstance in which an offense would play in the way that the Bills are playing right now, they would score a lot of points and be ahead and win a lot of games because they're scoring a lot of points. Right now, that's not the case because they're just not finishing those drives. They're not executing. They're not doing what they need to do in order to do the most important thing, which is score points right now. And that's where that disconnect, I think, is coming from.
And EPA is also historically backed up, right? Like, this is a statistic that they can derive from years and years and years and years. And you can go back and see that it basically, in 95, 98, 99% of scenarios, it makes sense. When a team has a very high EPA, they tend to score a lot of points or give up very few points when their defense has, an EPA that reflects that. The Bills, as a team right now, are one of the teams with the highest EPA in the entire NFL. They're also backed up by other advanced metrics like DVOA, I believe, still has them as the number 2 team in the entire league. And yet we watch this game and say to ourselves, there's something it's not right. I don't know what it is, but there's something not right. And they're not reflecting what the data is saying they should be. Like, the data says that Josh Allen is having one of the most freakish quarterback seasons we've ever seen. And I think Josh Allen's actually playing very well, but he can play so much better. And there's issues we've seen kind of rear its ugly head over the past few weeks where there are plays where people are wide open and Allen's choosing not to throw to them. That interception he threw last night was a perfect example. I have no idea what he was trying to do on that throw. There was no way he was going to complete that pass. And he just kind of stared it down, kind of pump faked a little bit. Like, it didn't do anything. And then he just threw it right to the Bengals player. It's moments like that where you have to look at Josh and be like, what are you doing, man? Like, those things kind of stop the ship. It stops the flow. It stops the momentum. And that kind of had a big impact on the game, even though the Bengals didn't score a point because the defense bailed Josh Allen out on the preceding possession.
Yeah, that particular play is a great example where it's just like Josh has made that read so many times before. He knows exactly what to do there, and for whatever reason, just didn't do it there. And that's where the frustration comes in, where it's like, all right, I'm gonna say something, and I apologize, because I'm gonna just bring up something. So, when I was growing up, I have an older brother. He's about 2.5 years older than me. And my mom would spend a lot of time trying to get him to learn how to spell words correctly because he just wasn't that good at spelling. And it's funny because he ended up being an English major, and he as he and his friends have described him, often talks in Times New Roman, where he just uses a lot of language that you're just like, I don't think you really know what that means, but I also don't know what it means, so I can't really challenge you on it. Anyway, growing, in elementary school, he just, they struggled with spelling. Anyway, so my mom would go through with him on this, and she'd be like, all right, spell this. And it's like, he would spell it, and he would spell it correctly. And then she would go on to another couple of words, and then she'd go back to that first word, and she'd be like, all right, spell this. And then he would get it wrong. And she's, and it was just like, okay, you spelled it right earlier, though. You just did it. I know you know how to spell it. You've done it before. are you just guessing? Like, do you not remember doing this? I need to clip this and send this to my brother. He's going to hate me, but
it's a perfect analogy for Josh Allen, though. It's literally a flawless analogy for him.
It's just, I don't know why that came to me. This is what happens. I'm totally worth it. I don't care. That was great. But it's really tough. It's tough to see something like that happen where, like, he knows what to do. Like, he's been in the league long enough. You've seen him do this correctly before enough times. And then for him to just, like, not do it. This is not like, it's not like the Bengals disguised this in some weird, freaky way. And they were like, oh, wow, look at that. You know, Big Lou cooked it up again. Like, and Lou Anarumo was a great defensive coordinator. But, like, what happened on that play was not based on, like, the Bengals doing some weird, wacky thing. It was just Josh Allen brain farting, essentially, and not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's not doing his 111th. He has to do his 111th, and he has to do it a lot because he's the quarterback. He doesn't get the chance to just sort of have a mulligan, right? Like, James Cook last night had a mulligan just because they didn't want the ball. They didn't want to run the ball at all. Like, and that's fine, right? Like, that was a game. I didn't want to run against that Bengals front. Are you kidding me? You try running against BJ Hill and DJ Reader right in front of you in the A and B gaps with Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. I don't want to run against that. That's insane. But, like, a running back is able to have a mulligan because he's not the most important player on the team. A quarterback is. He's not allowed to have that. That's just not what's supposed to happen. You can't allow yourself this opportunity to have that, especially when you're playing in games where you're playing so close to the margins. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks. Because you're playing so close to the margins, you don't have this room for mistakes. And maybe that's what's contributing to part of this. They're trying to play super tight. They're trying to play mistake-free. And then whenever they do make a mistake, they just can't figure out a way out of it. But also last night, after that interception, they found a way out of it. The Bengals didn't get any points out of that turnover in their own territory. It just doesn't make any sense. I can't. Come on. I need a second.
I mean, this is the thing with Josh Allen, right? Like, I don't think, okay, I'm going to say this, and I think this might piss some people off. I think Allen's playing better football right now, better as a quarterback than maybe any quarterback in the NFL. Like, he is doing more for his team than any other quarterback. He has, I think right now he has 24 touchdowns to 11 turnovers. For context, Patrick Mahomes has 17 touchdowns to 10 turnovers. So again, going back to data, everything says Josh Allen is playing the best football of any quarterback in the NFL. Yet we watch him and we say, my man, what are you doing? And the other part of this is, like, this is a team that in years past has relied on Josh Allen and said, okay, we can't win. Like, you have to go win the game. And this year, more than ever, they need him to be that guy because the defense is just absolutely decimated with injuries. They need Josh now to stand on his head every single week, put the Superman cape on, and really, he's not doing it. And I know a lot of people will say Ken Dorsey, and you know what? I'm starting to come around on that and say that Ken Dorsey is a major part of the problem, a bigger part than I ever realized. But I also want the same people saying that to look at Josh and say, there are things he's just not doing well right now. And one of them is he's just not seeing the field all that well. Like, he's missing open guys. He's not taking off and running at certain points where it makes sense. And at other points when it doesn't make sense, he is. Like, something's just weird. And I think after that interception, we really saw that in the game last night. Josh all of a sudden looked tentative. Like, he wasn't throwing the ball. Like, he was holding on to it a little long. Like, he was kind of pumping, moving. His reads looked sporadic. Like, something was clearly off. And it took him until the second half to basically say, like, all right, I'm just going to go psycho. I'm going to start running a lot more. I'm going to start doing all these things. And then all of a sudden you see that flash of that freakish elite superhero that Josh Allen is. We need to see that more often, not that kind of scared guy or not that brain farting consistently player. Like, we need the superhero. And if the Bills don't get the superhero over the next 8 weeks or so, this team's not going to make the playoffs. Like, they need the superhero to make the playoffs.
Yep, 100% agreed. All right, that's enough of the offense. I can't talk about that anymore. It's too much right now. All right, let's move on to the defense. So, if you had told me before this game started that the Bengals were going to score 24 points, I would have told you that's actually extremely impressive by the Bills defense. And right now, it is impressive, right? Like, it's a very, very impressive. Again, we talked about this already. They held them to 3 points in the second half. But what's even more confusing and interesting about this is the way in which the Bengals scored those touchdowns. Because T. Higgins had 8 catches for 110 yards, but no touchdowns. Jamar Chase had 4 catches on 8 targets for 41 yards and no touchdowns. But Drew Sample and Irv Smith both had touchdowns. And Joe Mixon, I mean, sure, give it to him from a couple yards out and he scores. That's fine. Whatever. Like, that's fine. But Irv Smith and Drew Sample are the ones who are scoring? Like, in some way it makes sense, right? Because the Bills are just decimated at linebacker right now. And they knew the Bengals were smart enough to target Tyrell Dotson and then Dorian Williams, right? Like, that they knew that that's what they needed to do. That makes sense. But also, and I say this as somebody who likes Christian Benford and likes Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson, by the way, probably his best game as a Bill. Yeah. Like, there were times where even when he was beat, he made up for it. Like, that was easily his best game as a Bill in my mind. But Dane Jackson and Christian Benford versus T. Higgins and Jamar Chase should not even be a thing that you consider, right? Like, that's easily one of the bigger mismatches of the entire week, I would say, right? But like, and T. Higgins played well. This is outside of like week 2 against Baltimore, this is T. Higgins' best game this year. 8 catches for over 100 yards. Jamar Chase was nothing. Did nothing in this game, and part of that was because he landed on his back awkwardly and was basically nursing it pretty much for the rest of the game. After I think it was the third quarter is when he got that injury. Collinsworth actually kind of made a really great comment because, like, as soon as he saw it, he was like, "That's he's not doing much in this game moving forward, and he's not going to do anything tomorrow either." Something tells me Collinsworth had something like that happen to him and knows exactly what that's like. But yeah, I mean, like, it was just such a weird game where not only did Irv Smith and Drew Sample score touchdowns, Tanner Hudson had 4 catches. Well, this is not how I expected the Bengals to win this game. Through all 3 of their tight ends to just like make catches and make plays for them. And then T. Higgins ends up being the leading receiver, even though he doesn't even score a touchdown. Like, like the way the Bengals won this game doesn't make sense to me. But in a way it does, because like the Bills are so decimated at linebacker, even before Terrell Bernard went out. And it just, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating watching this game.
Yeah, I think the Bills defense. So one thing to kind of get off my chest here is I did see a couple people harping on the defense after this game and saying the defense lost this game. I just have no idea how that is the conclusion post game. Like, the Bills defense, with basically half their starters being injured, held the Bengals to 24 points. Like, if you told me going into this game that they only scored 24 points, I'd be like, oh, the Bills probably won, right? Like, they or at least lost by like a point. Like, the Bills have to score 20 points this game. No, the Bills didn't. They scored 18 points and they lost this game because the offense wasn't capable of doing. The defense kept them in that. That being said, I thought the defense actually did a good job with a few things. They did a good job of, for the most part, containing T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, not stopping them. Obviously, T. Higgins had a really good game. Jamar Chase had a decent game, but I expected them to go off for 150 each, basically. And then Joe Mixon, for the most part, was contained in the run game. Like, he averaged, I think, under 3 yards a carry, maybe just over 3. So not a bad game on the ground. I didn't like all the research I did leading up to this game. I did not expect for a single second. I don't even think I wrote the name Tanner Hudson once. I don't think that was anywhere on my radar.
And you shouldn't have.
Yeah, yeah. Irv Smith was. I was like, maybe he makes a catch or two. And then Drew Sample, I was like, oh, they'll bring him in sub packages to help get Joe Mixon running. Like that's what he is.
He's a blocker tight end.
He's a Lee Smith. That's what he is.
Yeah.
And so when you start to see the Bengals, and this was a genius by Zach Taylor. He essentially went into this game. I guess it's not genius. It's just obvious. He goes into this game and he says, we know that the Bills have Terrell Bernard. We know he's a good linebacker. But whoever is next to him ain't. So target them. If we can get you matched up on that player, if we can see that zone, that's where you go, Joe Burrow. And that's what the Bengals did over and over again. And then the Bills lose Terrell Bernard. And then suddenly the floodgates should have opened. They should have cracked. And the Bengals should have put up 21 straight points easy. But somehow they didn't. And at the same time, like the Bills had Tyrell Dodson and Dorian Williams, and Dorian kept getting exposed on these weird like routes. Like every single time I saw the Bengals kind of make a good catch where they got a little bit of yak afterwards, you could see Dorian scrambling to get back into that zone, and he just wasn't there. That's something he'll learn with age, we hope and I believe. But right now, the Bills are in big trouble at linebacker. If Terrell Bernard can't go against the Broncos, McDermott's going to have to call the greatest game of his life, because at this point he really just has nothing. There's nothing on this defense to really write home about, because the injuries have absolutely decimated them.
Yeah, it's just been tough. And I wrote about this in my recap last night as my irk. And I think even when I got finished with that, I felt bad putting the defense in my irk, but my justification for that was not that, the defense put in this terrible performance. They're whatever. It's that I'm annoyed with this defense because they're trying their best and they're just not going to be in a position where they're going to be the reason the Bills win a game.
Yeah.
For the rest of the season, the Bills defense is not going to be the reason the Bills win a game. It has to be because of the offense. The defense is still playing well despite, relatively speaking, right? They're not producing well. They're not getting turnovers consistently. But for what has come from them, they're doing their best. I really genuinely believe that. And I think McDermott is doing the best that he can given the circumstances right now. But after a certain point, there's only so many things you could do. I to kind of steal from my own recap, right? Asking the McDermott and company to kind of cook up a bunch of different things to cover up all the losses that they've had is like asking a nurse to treat your gunshot wounds with Bactine and Band-Aids, right? This is just, it's not going to work. This is not what you need right now. What you need is a healthy Daquan Jones, a healthy Matt Milano, and a healthy Trey White. That's what you need right now, but you don't have any of those things. You don't have the things that you need to make this defense work right now. And it just sucks because we've seen how good this defense was. The first couple of weeks, they were amazing. That Washington game was phenomenal. And then after that Miami game, we all thought okay, maybe Trey White's out and that sucks because he's great and we love him and he was playing well. But you know what? Here comes Von Miller, right? Reinforcements are coming. Here it comes. And then Milano goes out and then Daquan Jones goes out. And Von Miller still isn't up to speed, which is about what I would expect at this point because he's 30-something years old and coming off of an ACL tear. We're not even a full year removed from his ACL tear. And he's been playing for 3 or 4 weeks now. I'm upset because, this defense should be amazing. It should be a top 5 defense right now. But they're not going to be anywhere close to that because they just are so depleted on that side of the ball. And it's tough.
Yeah, and it's been back-to-back years now too, right? And this was coming off a previous few years where the Bills essentially played injury-free because they have one of the best training staffs and training facilities in the entire world for a professional sports team, but sometimes bad luck happens. And that's literally what's happening to them right now with Trey White, with Daquan Jones, with Matt Milano. Now leaving this game, you have Terrell Bernard in concussion protocol. You have Micah Hyde maybe having a stinger, banged up. Bills was trying to figure out more on that. You have Christian Benford dealing with a hamstring injury. We don't really fully know the extent of that. And then Dane Jackson, there's something wrong with him too. So now it just your two starting linebackers are out. You might be out one of your safeties. You might be out your top three corners while trying to still teach Rasul Douglas, and you might have to start Josh Norman moving forward. It couldn't get worse. Okay.
No.
That's me knocking on wood. That's me knocking on. It can get worse because I said it couldn't get worse after last year with all the injuries the Bills had, and it's worse this year. It's so much worse. I am at least hopeful and optimistic. I think the Rasul Douglas move will have impact. It takes time though. Like he's got to learn the defense, and the Bills just kind of were forced to put him in last night and said, all right, at least just cover this guy. That's all you're going to do. Just cover that guy. We know that you have capability. And that's what they had to do because of injuries. And then on top of that, Linval Joseph, like tossing Joe Burrow like a little baby was one of my favorite parts of the game. I think he's going to be an important part of this defense surviving the rest of the season. You need Linval Joseph just to stack blocks and hope that a linebacker realizes that wide open gap is the one you're supposed to fill, not the freaking A gap on the other side, like Tyrell Dodson did on that Joe Mixon touchdown. Like they just need a break. Like they need some luck, and I don't know how they get luck. Like I don't know how you just create that.
I want to say you don't. Yeah, you kind of do and you don't, right? Like you kind of create your own luck, but also luck is still luck, right? Like a ball can bounce your way and you don't catch it. That's, letting it not work for you. But also the ball has to bounce your way to begin with, right? Yeah. Like it's just, it's weird and it's tough. And it's just very frustrating because again, we saw just how good this defense can be. Those first 4 weeks, they were just phenomenal. And it was clear the type of difference that McDermott was making as the defensive coordinator, where they were clearly more aggressive, but they weren't like being this blitz heavy team either, right? Like they were finding aggression just by having a different mentality. They were just playing downhill more. They weren't being passive. They weren't letting offenses sort of dictate to them what to do. They were trying to go out and make plays, and they're still trying to do that. They just don't have the horses to do that effectively and consistently. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of the Dolphins defense last year with Josh Boyer, where, and they were a very blitz heavy team, right? Like basically every third down was just like, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to hit engage 8 and we're going to try and create something. But they didn't have the players, especially on the back end, to try and do that and be consistent with it. And so they got burned quite a bit. And then they let go of Josh Boyer and bring in Vic Fangio. And, obviously there's been trouble with the transition to begin with. And, historically speaking, that is expected of Vic Fangio and those sorts of defenses. And we sort of expect them to improve the longer he's there. That's fine. This is not about the Dolphins, it's about the Bills. And with the Bills, at this point, right, like they're trying to do what they're doing. They just don't have the guys to do it. And there's only so much you can do. There's only so much it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to drop Tyrell Dodson into coverage because he's going to get targeted and picked on. You're going to bring him on a blitz. He's probably going to miss the tackle. Like there's only so much you can do with players that aren't good enough. And some people might say, well, that's on the GM for not getting this roster constructed correctly. It's like, listen, when your starters go out in the NFL, the odds that a backup is going to play as well are very low. This is not like the GM just isn't doing his job. This is just the reality of of professional freaking athletes, and that there's really only so many of them that can play at a high level. The Bills are fortunate, because their GM is so good, to have had a lot of great, talented players that are playing at a high level on their defense. Unfortunately, a couple of them have gotten hurt now, and at multiple positions, which means you can't just cover that all up.
Yeah. And I think, like, I'll always go back to the Matt Milano injury as being the biggest of the bunch. I mean, I think Daquan Jones was playing maybe the best football of his career and was dominating. Trey White was starting to kind of round into form as a CB1, but Matt Milano was a true difference maker for this team. He was a player every single week that the opposing team had to say, where's 58? We have to know where he is at all time. We have to game plan specifically for him. Do not throw at him. Pay attention to him on the blitz. If we're running, make sure you're running nowhere near him, because he'll force a fumble or he'll blow you up in the backfield. And through the first few weeks of the season, he was doing that at a ridiculous pace where it was like, yeah, he's a perennial all-pro moving forward. That it's not a discussion. He might be the best linebacker in the NFL. To lose a player like that, it can't go understated how detrimental that is to a defense as a whole, because now that one piece that the opponent has to game plan for, they don't have to really game plan for anybody at this point. They can just play offense, and their guys are better than your guys because all of your guys are hurt. And you can take any team in the NFL, any team with a good defense or a decent defense. If you take their best player off the field, they're going to get significantly worse. If you take their two best players off the field, they're going to be even exponentially worse than that. If you take their three best players off the field, they're going to be an absolute disaster. And then you take their fourth and their fifth and their sixth best player off the field, and they just can't survive anymore. And as much as Sean McDermott's a defensive coach, and I think he's a brilliant defensive coordinator, he doesn't have the horses. Like, I don't know what people expect from him. He's just trying to survive. And frankly, when we go back to this Bengals game, that defense somehow survived. They somehow survived, and they lost because their offense, led by a superstar quarterback that could be the best quarterback in the NFL at points when he's playing at the top of his game, he only put up 18 points. That offense only put up 18 points. That's why the Bills lost. They didn't lose because of the defense, that banged up unit. They lost because the offense couldn't cut it.
Yep, exactly. It's tough. That's sort of where the Bills are at right now. Everything is tough, everything hurts, and I'm dying. We're going to move on because the Bills are also going to have to move on from this, and they've got another primetime game, like we talked about. They're going to be facing the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. Good God. Can we flex this out? Can we get this? Can we get something else here? I know the Monday night rules are different, but like, can we not do this? Can we just push this to the 1:00 slate and be done with it? I can't. I don't want to watch this at 8:30 at night. Oh my God. Yeah. Anyway. So the Broncos are coming off their bye. They went into their bye having beaten the Chiefs, kind of stifling them for the second time this year, frankly, if we're being honest. They went into Kansas City and did a very good job against it. They just couldn't pull out that win. And, this defense has had some pretty good highs, like those Chiefs games, and some historically low lows, like giving up 70 points to the Dolphins. Yeah. And probably like a lot of things in life, the reality is somewhere in between those two extremes, where this Broncos defense is probably not that high level. And in fairness, the Chiefs offense is not playing super well as it is throughout most of the season, right? Like, their best games are the Bears, right? And the Bears are a total tire fire. And with the Broncos defense, I mean, Vance Joseph is another one of these sort of live by the blitz, die by the blitz types of guys. And, the Bills will probably find a way to do well against them. I don't want to say that this will be, they'll definitely beat the Broncos, because how can I possibly say that at this point, right? Like, there's no reason for me to be confident in this game. That being said, they should beat the Broncos because I think they're a better team than the Broncos. And I think that if they don't beat the Broncos, we're in for a real bad rest of the season.
Yeah.
It's gonna be very, very, very tough if they lose this game. But Sean Payton, kind of started off the season pretty bad. He's found a way to kind of start to right the ship. Russell Wilson is definitely playing better than he did last year with Nate Hackett. That's not super surprising. It's kind of hard not to. And I think my major concern really is the way that the Broncos are running the ball right now. And that's always, for all of the great stuff that the Broncos did, or not the Broncos, but the Saints did when Sean Payton was on that team with Drew Brees and all the passing records that they set together. Sean Payton has always been a run first type of guy. He comes from that Parcells tree. He's always going to believe in establishing the run. He's always going to believe in prioritizing offensive line first. It's why they paid out the wazoo for Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, right? They've got both of them in free agency. Spent a lot of money on Mike McGlinchey, like a concerning amount of money on Mike McGlinchey. But they are running the ball well, and it's because of. Excuse me. Sorry, this is tough. The Bills are giving me rough problems right now. It's Javonte Williams is playing well. He's coming off a torn ACL from last year, and I'm glad that he's playing well because he was great in college. And Jaleel McLaughlin has also been very good for them running the ball. And the Bills' defense, pretty much since McDermott has been there, has been susceptible to the run at times. And I think Sean Payton is probably looking at that like, if there's a way for us to win this game, it's probably going to be through those two guys. And I think that there's going to be a lot of drives where there's going to be some pretty sustained time of possession for the Broncos because they're going to be able to handle the ball, running the ball well.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. And I think that that's the recipe for the Broncos to win this game is run the ball well. I think Russell's been playing decent football this year, if not good football this year. But I really don't think that it's a game where you're going to have Russell to try to outsling Josh Allen. Granted, we've seen Mac Jones do it, so what the hell do I know? At the same time, though, like for me at least, I went into this Bengals game like in my matchup preview. I picked the Bengals to win. I just didn't really see the Bills pulling that one out. Like the Bengals just matched up better. Granted, they didn't really win the way I expected them to do, but nonetheless, they did win this game. So when I left that game last night, when I turned off the TV and started to get into bed, my actual reaction was, yeah, I mean, that's what I expected. It sucks. It sucks that they lost that game. That was an important game, but yeah, I expected that. It doesn't really change too much of my perception. Maybe I'm a little bit upset with the way the offense played, but at the same time, I go into this Broncos game and I say, yeah, this is a game the Bills should win. I mean, it's not just a game the Bills should win. It's a game they should dominate, but I'm not confident they'll do that. So my concern, at least for my mental health, is that come Monday night when I watch this game, if they don't win that game, like me, the forever optimist, and people hate me on Twitter because of this, because I'm always like, yeah, no, we're all right. We're all right. If they lose to the Broncos, and I'm going to be on Twitter that entire night just ripping into this team because that's it. That's the nail in the coffin. If they lose the Broncos, I think I'd be ready to pack up the season at that point.
That's very fair, and I'm probably with you at this point. If you don't beat the Broncos, like, who else are you beating the rest of the way? Because the Bills have, I think they said this last night, like the toughest remaining schedule left in the NFL, where they're playing the Chiefs, the Eagles, they got to play the Jets again, they got to play the Dolphins again, they got to play the Patriots again, and the Patriots aren't good, but like they also lost to the Patriots, so what does that matter at this point? Like, it's just, it's been tough, and the Dolphins, who are still leading this division, by the way, and only doing so because the Bills keep letting them lead this division, because the Dolphins have lost a couple of games now, and the Bills could have put themselves in great position to lead this division if they had beaten New England, but they didn't. They could have put themselves in position again this week if they had beaten Cincinnati, but they didn't. And there's still a chance, right? Maybe the Dolphins just aren't who people want them to be. That's certainly possible. Maybe they just continue to struggle down the stretch and the Bills somehow find a way to rally and make it work, and they're, sitting atop of the AFC East again. I'm certainly not going to be the one to predict that, though, because I feel like that's foolish talk. I feel like that's really an asinine thing to try and talk about right now in a realistic sense. It's just, right now, this is a week-to-week team. You can't look beyond any opponent at this point. You have to win as many games as you possibly can and hope that a bounce goes your way, or multiple bounces goes your way, or a referee call goes your way, because at this point you need everything to work out right now, because you are going to be facing the best the NFL has to offer pretty much the rest of the way. And the way the Bills are playing, it's probably not going to end well for them. It's a tough thing to say, and it's going to suck watching a lot of this season, I think. But that's where it's at right now. And that's pretty much all I got. Do we want to do? Oh, well, I have one. I don't know if you have something, but I have one.
You got one. I got one. I got one for you.
Okay.
You can pick who goes first. If you want to go first, you can go first.
We might have the same one.
Oh.
But I'm gonna do it anyway. Oh. We're gonna do a quick round of
true or rubbish. Let's go.
True or rubbish. Let's go. All right, I'm gonna go first. Tell me if this is the one.
I know what you're gonna say. It's not what I have.
Okay. So, true or rubbish. Shogun on FX is going to be your most anticipated show of 2024.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Wait, hold on, I forgot.
This was true. All after all, can't believe it. It was true.
Yeah, the good news for us, Dave, is like if the season just absolutely completely shits the bed, this can just become a Shogun prep.
Oh, absolutely.
We kind of dig into maybe lore. We do a little bit more research on this trailer that we saw last night.
So I already did a little bit actually. And apparently this show is an adaptation of a book called Shogun, which is a sort of fictionalized story. Hold on, let me consult with my producer here. Shogun
it reminded me of Last Samurai when I saw the trailer. Yeah.
Shogun is a 1975 novel by James Clavell. It is the best novel of the author's Asian saga. It's apparently quite the popular story, obviously, or there wouldn't be like an actual TV adaptation of it. But when that first came on during the game, I was like, well, that looks kind of interesting. And then it kept going. I was like, this looks so cool. I don't know if that was the first trailer they showed of that, or if that's the first. This is the first time I ever heard of it. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. I gotta watch this.
I literally paused my brain thinking about the Bills, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I can care about this right now. If this game really goes south, I can care about this.
All right. That was it for me. What do you got for me?
Okay, mine's a little bit more football related.
Okay,
but
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna go true rubbish. I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. Okay, of the non-division leaders in the AFC. Who is the most scary team to play in the playoffs? You can say the Bills if you want.
I could say the Bills. I'm not going to because I don't want to do that to myself. First of all, I need to actually see who is leading these divisions or division standings. 2023 division standings. Hold on, I'm sure this is great work. Okay, so. The current leaders in each division, right? In the East, it's the Dolphins. In the North, it's the Ravens. In the South, it's the Jaguars. And in the West, it's the Chiefs. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Okay, so the runner-ups in each of these divisions. The Jets are currently in second place. They're about to play the Chargers. They sit at 4-3. In the North, it's the Steelers. They're 5-3 somehow. Although, is this okay? So this is how
It's
is this
tiebreak.
AFC?
Yep.
Yeah. So so all of the teams in the AFC North outside of the Ravens are at 5-3, and it's going to come down to tiebreakers for them at the moment. In the South, it's the Texans who won a dramatic game yesterday to get to 4-4. In the AFC West, do you know who the second place team in the AFC West is?
I do. Yeah, I do.
It's the Las Vegas Raiders, which is astounding to me that the Raiders are the second
It's wild.
best team in that division. That's insane. Okay. So of these runner-up teams, so you just want the second place teams? Is that what you're?
You could give me last place team if you want.
And any team.
Yeah.
There's part of me. Okay, it's between two teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets and the Browns.
Oh, okay. Did not see those answers coming.
So
I know why.
It's for the same reason. It's because they both have elite level defenses, and that often plays very well in the playoffs. But the Jet, I just refuse to believe in the Jets offense because I don't believe in Zach Wilson as a concept. And although they do have Breece Hall, and I like Breece Hall a lot, and I wish the Bills had taken Breece Hall in that draft, but we won't discuss that. But with the Browns offense has also been hit by injuries because this team should be able to rely on Nick Chubb. They just can't because he's destroyed his knee. And the Nasty Man is now playing again. We'll see how long that lasts. And he didn't play horrible yesterday, but he also didn't play well, and that's not a good Cardinals defense, right? So if he's not playing well against that, I don't really believe in that. It might be the Jets. Like, I want to say the Bengals, but I don't know about them. Like, that's tough. I think it's either the Jets. I'm going to say the Jets. I hate myself for saying that, but I'm going to say it's the Jets.
Okay. I'm going to give you my answer, and there's a bit of a homer take here.
Okay,
I do believe it's the Bills. I truly believe it's the Bills.
It was all rubbish.
And I don't believe that because the Bills are playing well. I don't believe that because I think the Bills are the best runner-up team or team not in first place. I actually think it's the Bengals that are the best, the way that they're playing right now, even though they didn't play all that great yesterday. I think at the end of the day, if you ask one of these teams, what team don't you want to face in the playoffs? I believe it's the Bills because of Josh Allen and Josh Allen alone. You don't want to face the wild card that he is, where he can literally beat anyone by himself. If you play the Jets, you know that Zach Wilson ain't going to do shit. You know that. You just have to not turn the ball over. And in the playoffs, I trust a team like the Chiefs or like the Ravens to not let them beat them. I don't think a team like the Ravens wants to play the Bills, where Josh could literally rip them to shreds and outduel Lamar Jackson. I don't think the Chiefs want to play the Bills, where Josh could do the same thing. I think it comes down to Josh Allen being that dude when he wants to be, and I don't know if he wants to be right now. I hope he does later in the season. I think it's the Bills, and the next team would be the Bengals, just because Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are the two best quarterbacks not leading the division right now.
That's fair. I get that. I'm sticking with my answer, and it pains me to do that, but that's just where I'm at right now.
Zachary Wilson. Oh,
listen, I don't like it. It just is what it is right now.
True.
All right. Thank you all for watching this show. We are very grateful that this was, first of all, very great turnout. I think we reached about like 103 at a certain point, and especially after a tough loss like that. We're actually, I'm very grateful to all of you for coming out and watching the show. It's really great. It's a lot better to do this when there's a lot of people watching and comments popping off. It's really great. We really appreciate every one of you guys for coming in and tuning in. And if you want to catch more just great content about the Bills. Obviously, you guys are here right now. If you're not subscribed to Cover One on YouTube, go do that right now. Hit the like on this video. Share it with your friends, enemies, lovers, and neighbors. It really helps our channel a lot. Comment down below. And if you want to support us even further, you can always, like we said at the top of the show, One Pass is a great place for everyone here. Yeah, it's $60 a year. To ignore the 57 there, it changed. It's $60, but it's even with that, it's a great value. You get a ton of great content. You get access to this wonderful community of people on Slack. You can talk about. You can probably have the best conversations about football you'll have with this group of people, and also other stuff. There's just it's a great community of people, and they talk about a whole bunch of different things. It's really great. You also get a nice t-shirt and a decal, and who doesn't love a little bit of swag? So consider signing up for One Pass if you aren't already. We are very grateful for our One Pass subscribers as it is. Uber, where can the people find you?
Find me on Twitter at UberHansen. I'll have a rooting interest post coming out Wednesday morning telling you who to root for to hope that we get a little bit of help to get the Bills into the playoffs with some tiebreakers and things like that, as well as my matchup preview coming out on Friday, where I'm fairly confident, but that confidence could change very quickly, that I will pick the Bills to beat the Broncos. Who knows if they'll actually do that, though.
You all can find me on Twitter at DFAUXY. I also write very tired recaps after each game because the Bills aren't playing in any game that does not leave me anything but tired. Because on Sundays, I have very long days. Anyway, that's it for me. That's enough complaining for me. Thank you all for joining. We will see you all next week, hopefully after a Bills win. Have a good night. Bye-bye.